Hoof listeners, welcome in to this beautiful Thursday evening. It's a great time to be doing basement podcasts, right? With the heat wave outside. I'm glad that we set up both our studios in our basements because
Yeah,
it's nice and cool down here, and it's been hot this week. Not
brutal.
in a good,
Yeah,
not
today
in a good way.
was 94, I think, here in Syracuse. Yesterday was a record high. So yeah, it's been pretty brutal the last few days. It has been nice to, for me, both work from home in the basement and now do the show right here in the basement as it's starting to quote unquote cool off, but it's still very humid and 90 out. So yeah, I'll
Right?
take it for sure. Good time to
Yeah,
be in the basement.
it is. It is. Good decisions. But yeah, I go to the office. Then I have to get back in my car. It's probably like 110 degrees in the car. The AC takes a minute to kick on, right? So it's just brutal.
Yeah, yeah. Even with the windows down at first, to air out the car, I'm like,
Yeah.
geez, it's sweaty.
Yeah.
Didn't want to leave to get lunch today, but
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we're talking before we hopped on here. Your little collection in the background, right? Let's go
yeah,
through that a little bit because
yeah, yeah.
your collection's grown a lot here in the last few weeks.
Well, it's
And
more I finally got it on the walls. I actually had
okay,
all of these, but I
yeah, I
grew
think
the
you started off
collection
with
over
just a couple.
time. Yeah, yeah, and now it's just a matter of hanging them all. I got the frames for them and actually took the time to put them up. So yeah, you see, I've got past and present covered. Try to deal, all the colors as well. So yeah, it's a good little
Yeah, yeah,
collection, and it's not all of them. I have a huge Josh Allen frame with pictures and everything out in the man cave area.
nice.
So
That's the
yeah, that's
front and center.
that's the
That's a good
best
one to
one.
have.
Yes, right,
I
exactly.
feel like that OJ Simpson one is
Yeah, well,
valuable.
now obviously, I mean, he did a ton of signing everywhere, but
Right, right.
yeah, now it's
Maybe
it's
for
a good
prison.
piece to have. Billy Shaw, underrated, previous NFL before
Yeah,
the NFL
good one.
times guy, right? And
And James
he's
Cook, right,
still alive.
becoming a
He's like
player
90
now.
years old. He's still alive. Uh,
Oh wow.
Bennett, Greg Rousseau in the middle, yeah. James Cook, rookie year, number 28,
Right.
right? So
He's becoming a player now, so that's a good one to have for sure.
yeah, yeah.
What's
Andre
on the top
Reed.
what's on your top row there?
Up top, it's hard to see. I'll adjust the camera a little bit. You got Stephon Diggs. I'll always appreciate him, so I'm going to keep that one up. Tyler Bass in the middle there, which we
Yep.
know, and
Could
then
that
Ryan
could be
Fitzpatrick. So you've
Tyler
got
Bass could be coming down this year. We'll see.
no, we're going to keep it up. He's going to do amazing this year. He's going to have that bounce back year. Let's hope. On the
Yeah.
side too, we've got Jim Kelly's college signed, and then Edmonds, and then shirt from Stevie Johnson that I got when he was in Colorado with the Colorado Bills backers, which was fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I
nice
remember
to
that one.
finally have it up. It feels organized now. I had this stack and they were in the plastic and all preserved, but now it looks
Yeah.
like it's coming together
Looks
nicely.
pristine back there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Alright, so we're gonna get into the Bills' road to the top in 2024, right? What does that mean? Well, we're really just looking at the AFC and maybe who the Bills will have to face in the playoffs, and then we're also gonna go through the teams in the division. Those games are so important, right? So that every division game is usually competitive, so we threw all the division rivals on there, and then just a handful of teams that the Bills may have to. These are the teams you're gonna have to beat in the playoffs to get over the hump, right? We're
Yeah.
gonna go through them one by one here, and then we'll call it a night. Not a lot happening in football right now. Go outside, spend time with your family. But I thought this would be a good topic to get into.
Definitely, yeah, because this is, we got to start previewing these teams. There's a lot to learn before the season starts, that's for sure.
Yes. Real quick, good question about your wall before we get going here, John. So, who do you think
Mm.
will end up being next on your wall on the Bills wall?
Well,
He means the Bills Wall of Fame.
Wall of Fame at the Bills, yeah. I mean, you talk about my wall, one piece that I don't have in my collection. I have a bunch of mini helmets as well, but I want to get a Bruce Smith piece. We talked about it a little bit. That's one of those players. I mean, when you talk about the Bills, there's one thing to say, Ryan Fitzpatrick, that's a cool one to have for a Bills fan, right? But Bruce Smith is the greatest of all time at his position, and nobody can argue that. So I would love to have, and he doesn't do a ton of signing. I know he's actually doing one upcoming for one of the big companies that does this in Buffalo. So I'm going to try and get me one of those, but they tend to run a lot higher price wise. But man, yeah, when you're talking greatest of all time, Bruce Smith, that's one I'm looking to add to my collection. In terms of the Bills Wall of Fame, which is, what they're not going to have a Wall of Fame in the new stadium, but they're going to do something in terms of honoring old players.
Ring of Honor, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we know that eventually Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer will be part of that collection. Those guys carried this team from being obsolete and nowhere, and were part of the transition to every year contending for a Super Bowl. And the Bills in general will appreciate that. All of Bills Mafia loves those guys. They will be there. I think there's other people who need to be appreciated as well. I mean, you talk about Kyle Williams and
Sure.
Wood, the guys. How about Brian Moorman, right? Like, I mean, there's guys.
Yeah, put them in.
Yeah, why not, right? Like the Bills Wall of Fame. It's weird how they do their selection. It seems to take a while for some guys, and who's in good graces, who's
Yeah.
who do they feel like honoring? It's a weird selection process.
Yeah, maybe Eric Wood, long-term Bill, right?
Right, and he's he does the announcing too. So
yeah. I don't know about like Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. They weren't really here long. They were loved when they're here.
That's a long time.
Yeah, but you kind of look at the Wall of Fame as like guys who have played their whole career in Buffalo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that doesn't realistically happen anymore with a lot of guys in the NFL, right? You're not going to get
guys
I
guess it's just quarterbacks at this point, right?
Yeah.
Trey White, you think he did enough?
He just wasn't there long enough, I think, to be like Wall of Fame. He'd be one of these. Like, I would love to have a Trey
probably
White
injuries
jersey,
cost him.
But yeah,
he had productive years. The last 2 seasons, I think he'd be in the running. But
legendary again, one of those guys who's like a legendary Bills player because of his personality and who he was when he was here. But in terms of Wall of Fame, just not long enough. Definitely consistent enough when he was there for 4 years. He was tops in the league and really proved himself. But after that, the 2 seasons of injury and the inability to come back, and
what about Diggs? Maybe look back on this time for the Bills, right?
Yeah,
and say, wow,
4 years.
Diggs was really good.
Yeah, he's the best wide receiver 4 years production ever for the Bills, right? And that's again something to be appreciated, but not legendary like Wall of Fame for the Bills type status. But certainly one of the greatest players to ever put on a Bills jersey. You can you can't keep Diggs out of that conversation for sure.
Yeah, a lot of fun times with Diggs. Anyway, all right, let's get back on track here. Let's kick it off with the first team, the New England Patriots, right? And they're on here not because they're going to make the playoffs. They're just on here because the Bills have to play them twice. And if you want to, win the division, get a good seed in the playoffs, you're going to have to beat them, right? I think you maybe had 2 wins versus the Jets. I had a split. I had a split with Miami. So these 2 games with New England become important. What do we know about the New England Patriots, right? Full rebuild on offense, new coaching staff. I think most people assume it's going to be kind of a rebuild year for them. You know how it is with a rookie quarterback, right? We went through this. You just want to see him improve every week. No one really cares about winning at the end of the day. No one expects to win. You just want to see the quarterback improve every week. And I feel like that's where the Patriots are going to be. Drake May, kind of a raw talent, right? Needs to work on mechanics, things like that. Picking up the new offense, new head coach, whole new culture there, most likely. So that'll be a lot for him. But I feel like that's kind of what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots are, I've said this before on the show when we talked about just the division in general and how it is mapping out right now. Patriots are going to be the team that upsets the division, right? They are going to have a victory over Miami, a victory over the Jets, maybe a victory over the Bills. That's going to be pivotal in the contention for the division, right? And the playoff seeding. So they will eventually, again, I expect them to beat at least one of those teams. And it's going to come on them playing their best football and catching their opponent in the right setting, the right weather, the right time, right? They can do that. Now, how long is it going to take the Patriots to start clicking, and when are they going to start playing the rookies and, getting them worked in more? I think by the time the Bills play them at the end of the season, they're going to be in there, no question. It's just a matter of how long it takes and how much experience will they already have on the field at that time. It could benefit the Bills in a sense that, oh, they waited and now it's much easier to write them off, but it could be harder in a sense that, oh, now they've got this experience, they know what they're doing, and they have a good game plan going in against the Bills. And, their defense is still pretty good. So you think that, again, you can't overlook the Patriots, but you absolutely should be favored to beat them by multiple touchdowns, right? So I don't look at them as much competition in the AFC East, but that does not mean I'm overlooking them in the AFC East.
Yeah, and we'll see, because like with Bill Belichick gone, it's literally, do we even know the Patriots anymore? They're going to be a whole new team. I mean, it's just too hard to carry that culture on with a guy like Bill Belichick leaving, right? Is there a power struggle, right? You kind of you're feeling that stuff out in year one, right? You're kind of regaining the respect of the players, right? A lot of those guys were under Bill. They brought back a lot of players. So I think there's going to be some, it's going to be a rough road for them. The Bills do play them late in the year. So really the question is, do the Patriots figure it out? Maybe go on a run late in the year, maybe knock off the Bills once. I think that's really what your only concern should be as a Bills fan, right? If they can get hot late. But yeah, they bring back 2 tight ends, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. They bring in. They did let Mike Gesicki walk. Not sure where he landed, but they moved on from him. Receiving core, right? I think the big story about the Patriots offense outside of quarterback is this receiving core. Like, okay, there's some players here now, right? Kendrick Bourne's back. KJ Osborne comes over. We know they drafted Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. I mean, those guys, kind of speedy guys, possession receivers, but I mean, that works when you have a lot of the same type of receiver, right?
Right.
But I think
and
something to pay attention to.
You're working in, again, the rookie quarterback, the rookie receivers. If they can get on the same page and learn together, the idea is that's going to take a few years, right? I don't think anybody expects them to come out of the gate firing, but that starts in this year, and you're going to see some flashes from those guys to at least show their potential, right? That's what matters in this first year.
Yeah, like I said, it'll be a long, early part of the season is going to be rough for them, but late in the year, maybe they start figuring it out. John also mentions in the comments, Pats just re-signed Stevenson.
Yeah,
4-year deal for running back, so that's pretty significant
big
for
deal.
him.
Yeah. But that's, they're a run team. Well, they have been, for a long time,
Right.
and I think they'll continue to be. But we'll see. Yeah, important player for them though, in terms of a lot fantasy value, especially, but other things as well.
Right, and then Jacoby Brissett coming over, right? I think that's big for them. No, not a flashy player by any means, but he won't turn the ball over. Plays safe, right? And that's kind of what New England wants, what they need. So if something happens to Drake May or he's not ready to play, good spot for them to fall back on. The other thing is the defense looks the same as from a personnel standpoint, right? They bring back Jennings on the edge, Josh Uche's back, Kyle Duggar comes back. I love Kyle Duggar as a player. But I think you're going to see a really similar defense with the New England Patriots.
Unfortunately, yeah, because they that's the one thing that they have done well, at least. I mean, they're beatable. It's not like they're all-world defense that's shutting people down, but it gives you enough to plan for, right, on that defense. And certainly with a healthy pass rush, that's something they do very well as well, right? So, again, they have guys on that team that can produce, and on their best day, they can beat anybody. So, we can't overlook them, but at the same time, I trust that Sean McDermott and the Bills are going to be ready enough for them to have the right game plan and right mentality going in against a team like that on how to handle the rookie quarterback and rookie receivers, how to handle that really good pass rush, and what's coming out of the backfield for them as well on defense, and really that ball control. A theme I think is going to be with the Bills in general. Ball control, longer drives, control the clock, score touchdowns, and shut your opponent down, because your defense is also pretty dang good. So I do think that the matchup still is very highly favorable for the Bills.
Yeah,
even with the good
agree.
defense.
Agree. The only concern I have is okay, they have the Patriots in Buffalo. Is it the 22nd? So that's week 16, and then they're at New England week 18.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. So, and they come off a tough stretch going into week 16. You got the Chiefs, 49ers, Rams, Lions. My concern is don't put yourself in a position like they did last year where the last 3 or 4 games are must-win games.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It just puts too much pressure on everybody,
Sure.
and New England, if they're well coached in the past, right? If they're anything like that moving forward, they could play spoiler here, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I
the
mean,
one concern.
the other part you have to look at is the New England's going to be competing for the first overall pick maybe at that time, right? So they're going to want to lose games as much as they want to win them. Now, no player goes out there saying, "Oh, we have to lose this game," but the franchise understands that. So maybe they do put the rookie out there, or maybe they throw a bunch of younger guys out there that are more inexperienced just to give them experience and know that that means we have better shot at the top picks that we're going for at that time. Because I don't expect the Patriots to be around 500. I expect them to be more like 4 or 5 win team
Right.
max, right? So that's probably in contention for a top 5 pick.
Mhm.
And if you win a game down the stretch, we've seen that very thing happen in the last week of the season, right, with the Houston Texans, and you could lose the first overall pick because you beat
Yeah.
an opponent. Now,
Right. Well, it's
that
like the Jets with Trevor Lawrence, right? He would be
yeah,
wearing a Jets uniform right now. You wouldn't have all this Zach Wilson
exactly.
conversation. But they beat the Rams that year,
Mhm,
ended up with the
mhm.
number 2 pick. So yeah. But anyway, I don't know. New England also, like, you always underestimate them, and they somehow get to 500, right? I think they've had one really bad season last year, but before that, I mean, they're they're close to getting Mac Jones in the playoffs. They did get Mac Jones to the playoffs. You know what I mean? So if they're anything like they were as far as culture and coaching,
Sure.
they could surprise a lot of
And
people.
Mayo, he's gotta learn. He's learned a lot. He's experienced, but he's not the head he's the first time being the head coach now. So, we'll see how that transitions as well.
All right, let's move on. I think I'm bored here with the Patriots. I think we lost a lot of listeners on the Patriots. Those of you still left, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging in there. All right, let's wind it up a little. Cleveland Browns, right? Quite unexpected to be on this list as a competitor. The Bills may have to face in the playoffs. They're
Oh,
not on the
yeah.
regular season schedule. But you just look at Cleveland and, like, literally a quarterback away.
Mm.
They had a great season last year. I mean, made Joe Flacco a star. Did he win comeback player of the year? He was in the running.
He
I'm not
did.
sure if he did
He
win. Yeah.
did.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not, I mean, Joe Flacco's just out there launching it, right? It's working. So I think they have a great, play caller and their head coach Stefanski. Defense is, probably top 1 or 2 in the AFC at least. I mean, maybe in the league. They're in that conversation, I'd
Mhm.
say. And then Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, you still have those players. I mean, a lot to like about Cleveland. What do you think about them being on this list as a
Oh,
potential
yeah.
playoff
I
team the
mean,
Bills
I
are looking
think
to play?
that they are a team that the Bills have to be aware of during the season, right? Because going into the playoffs, this is a team that could threaten you, right? You're talking about a team that was the best defense overall last year and has retained a lot of those guys and probably gotten healthier on that side of the ball. And now you look at their offense, like you said, they were led by Joe Flacco when now Deshaun Watson is presumably going to come back healthy. And although we're not particularly big fans of the guy, he's a dang good quarterback when he's on, right? And but now he's got even better weapons there in Cleveland, and they're getting Nick Chubb back, their best player, the running back. And, is he going to be that star that he was 2 years ago coming off an injury? Well, that is yet to be determined. But there's no doubt that this offense is way better and the defense is pretty much the same. So that immediately makes this Cleveland Browns team a threat. One to be reckoned with, one that I fully expect to be in the playoffs next year, and that if the Bills get matched up with them, they have to be ready for them. Because like you said, we don't play them in the regular season. This isn't one that we're going to, have that experience of. It's one we're going to be observing from the outside and say, okay, we've seen what they've done all year, and this is our game plan going in on how to deal with that really good defense and that, strikeable very good offense that has a quarterback who's capable of doing anything and running around the field as well.
Yeah, and I think you look back at their season last year. I mean, there's big winning streak at the end of the year, week 14 through 17, right? They won 4 in a row, beat the Texans, beat the Jets, right? They lose to Cincinnati, blowout week 18, and then just get completely blown out in the playoffs. And that's just, you ran out of steam with the quarterback. But I feel like if Deshaun Watson comes back to 3/4 of what he was, half of what he was, it's a whole different team, in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't even have to be 100% coming out of the gate. And, Joe Flacco, yes, he did good things there, but it's not like, that's elite competition to live up to if you're Deshaun Watson.
Yep. The other thing, too, they bring in Jameis Winston. So, Joe Flacco obviously gone. But if Deshaun Watson goes down again with injury, they bring in Jameis Winston. They also bring in Tyler Huntley over from Baltimore. Who we've seen, Tyler Huntley, we've seen a few flashes from him, right? And almost knocking off Cincinnati in the playoff game. It came down to one play, right? But he led his team, right? Also added to the interior, Quentin Jefferson, Shelby Harris, kind of some veterans beefing up that defensive line.
Shelby Harris, yeah. Somebody should contribute, yeah.
I feel like they also drafted Michael Hall Jr., second round out of Ohio State. And I think we talked about the guard they drafted in the 3rd round out of Michigan, Zach Zinter.
Yeah, in our preview for the draft. Yeah.
Would have been higher probably the draft. Had
Good pick.
A nasty leg injury in Michigan. So that probably made him fall a little bit. But yeah, beefing up the line, right? And that's kind of what they've been. And the reason you don't want to play them if you're the Bills is they push you all over the place, right? And I feel like in the playoffs, that matters more, right? There's a lot more line play. And really the Bills have been undersized. They're more finesse on defense. So they're susceptible to be pushed around during playoff time.
Yes. And that's something, again, when you're a physical team like Cleveland, and like you just said, they're adding in those same places, offensive line, defensive line. How many times do we say that is where games are won, right? Any coach, any, cliche thing is going to tell you that, but it's 100% true, because going into the playoffs after the grind of the season, it's those guys who are really in the trenches and, leveraging which way the game goes and whose favor the game goes in. So that is a team to be reckoned with in the playoffs, assuming their health coming into that. But I mean, I do expect them to make it to the playoffs.
I thought about putting other teams in here like the Chargers, the Jaguars, but really I feel like the Bills match up well with them. Cleveland, I feel like, is the mismatch. So you get to playoffs, I don't think you want to go to Cleveland if you're the Bills. Again, remains to be seen. It's a totally different team. A lot's going to happen between now and then, but where we are right now, I feel like they could be on the list. All right, moving on. The New York Jets, right? Another division rival. Again, some people have them going far in the playoffs. Some people have them winning 3 games. I mean, they're just one of those teams. And really, again, like the Cleveland Browns, it all comes down to quarterback, right?
No.
Well, I mean, if Aaron Rodgers shows up, he has a little gas left in the tank, he plays decent, I think they could win, right? I mean, they have a good defense. They have weapons on offense. But really, what killed them last year is the passing game, right? Couldn't do anything with Zach Wilson at the helm.
Yeah, and injuries, right? That's the big question with this team as well. Not just the quarterback. He could be healthy all year, and I think he's still mediocre at best. So mediocre quarterback play if he's healthy. And then you've got, a wide receiver too in Mike Williams, who is a career of injuries, right? And you don't know if he's going to stay healthy. God forbid Garrett Wilson go down. What are you going to do with this team? If one guy goes down, there's no depth on this team. Your defense is the same way. Your offensive line is the same way. You've addressed a lot of things, but the problem is your depth, your front lines are not built to succeed. They're not built to endure a season, right? Because you're undoubtedly going to have injuries, as every team does. And I'm sick of the Jets using that excuse of injuries. But even if they stay completely healthy, they have to worry about making the playoffs, because they have to go through the Bills. They have to go through Miami and prove themselves as a playoff team and deal with the rest of the AFC competition and say, okay, we can make it. And it's still theoretical that they could finish 3rd in the AFC East and make the playoffs. We've seen that, so that could happen. And if it does, they would have to then match up in the playoffs with much better teams. I mean, think about the team we just spoke about, Cleveland. Good defense, just as good offense. I think that wouldn't be a favorable matchup for them. You think about the Bills, right? Because that's the team that matters for us. The Bills are going to have played them twice already, and we're going to know what that situation is. And again, if you're asking me, I think the Bills are a much better team overall than the Jets. But the bigger problem here is that when was the last time the Jets made the playoffs? They're an organization of bad luck and screw ups. That's what they do. Anybody who doesn't have that expectation is unreasonable just because that's what we know. That is what they've proven year in and year out. No matter how much talent they bring in, no matter how good they look on paper, no matter how much money they spend, they suck. So anybody who's like, oh, the Jets are going to win the division, you're just pulling that out of thin air. There's nothing to back that up. So again, I'm not high on the Jets. I think it's improbable that they make the playoffs. But if they do, even if they do and they are healthy, they still have a huge uphill battle against AFC opponents, right? They don't match up well against any of the teams that we really expect to be there in the playoffs, in my mind at least. I mean, these other teams we're going through, you'll see that. You can let me know if you think the Jets match up well against them. And you're right. They do have a good defense, and if they're able to stay healthy and that defense is able to do its thing, then maybe they would upset one of the AFC opponents. But that doesn't mean they're going to suddenly make a run to the Super Bowl or anything. Like, I just am not, it's not realistic to be scared of the Jets in my mind when it comes to playoffs, especially.
Yeah. Well,
division-wise, you always have to worry about division opponents, but it's not realistic.
Yeah, and I feel like the pressure's on them, right? Pressure was on them last year, didn't come through. This is kind of the make or break year, it feels like. So what's that do, right? When there's pressure on the head coach, and if he gets fired at the end of the year, it's either you succeed and everything's great, right? Maybe keep him another year, make that decision at the end. But if things go bad, it's almost like magnified, right? If you lose a game you're supposed to win, for example, everyone starts blaming everybody else, and it can get ugly really, really quick, right? And that's kind of where they are. And I don't think they've really proven they can overcome that, right? And that's kind of been like that story the last 2 seasons. But that remains to be seen, right? I feel like they've really loaded up on talent this year. So maybe this is the year, right?
Well, it's all or nothing for them. That's why, because they know if they don't make the playoffs, it's pretty much fire everybody and start from
over
scratch
again. Right.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, so they haven't made the playoffs since 2010.
Actually longest streak in the
championship
NFL
game. There's what, year 14 now, 15. But yeah, to address, you mentioned the offense and defensive line. If they have injuries, they did address some depth, right? John Simpson, I think comes over from Baltimore, previously with Cincinnati. Tyron Smith from Dallas, going to be 34 years old, but still one of the best.
Good additions. Oh yeah.
Javon Kinlaw from San Francisco, right? Defensive interior. Solomon Thomas gets re-signed. They also bring in Tyrod Taylor as a backup, formidable backup.
Yes.
Right. I mean, he's had his opportunities past few years, but injuries and things like that, he hasn't really played a lot. But when he does play, the ball's safe. We know that about Tyrod.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's an upgrade in my opinion. He can make a few throws a game, right? So definitely an upgrade from last year. Not to mention the draft, right? They take one of the top offensive tackles. Was it Fasano?
Yes. Yeah. So they did good.
Yeah. So there's depth there now, right? It's really, again, I'll say it again. It comes down to the quarterback play, right? If Aaron Rodgers can come in and stay healthy, they have a lot of primetime games. If he can be even 3/4 of what he was, I think they could win some games. I mean, go far in the playoffs, don't see it, but beat the Bills once, certainly.
We'll see. That's all I can say. We'll see. I don't know where the hype comes from. I just don't.
It's just
a good team on paper, right?
Yeah.
So we're the Chargers. You're the Chargers, Jets. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. And in previous years, I would have had the Chargers on here, but
that's right.
I learned my lesson. All right, last one in the divisional opponents, the Miami Dolphins, right? Something about the Dolphins, especially late in the year. Like, look, Dolphins could beat the Bills once. That's fine. But when it comes to playoffs, we can talk about that with Miami. I think they'll be there. The Bills just have their number, right? So I have no worries of playing with Miami anymore. I mean, it just seems like the same story over and over. Bills just match up well against them, right? They know how to
Yes.
contain the speedy receivers. They know Tua, and they know how to confuse him in those quick looks. So yeah, what do you think
And
about Miami?
and one Josh Allen who, Father's Day was last weekend and he owns the Miami Dolphins, right? I mean, every game, it's just his stats are ridiculous against the Dolphins. And like you said, I think part of that is Sean McDermott's scheming against the Dolphins and what they do is elite, right? So, I mean, there's no completely shutting them down, but the Bills have come close to doing exactly that multiple times, even when they were this, oh my God, they're the best offense in the NFL. Well, the Bills made them look silly. So, I think that, yeah, like you said, going into the playoffs, they're definitely a team to be contending. We expect them to be there, but they need to prove that they can maintain at the end when it counts, right? Because year after
Right.
year, it seems they fall off. Come November, December, they just disappear. They could be the best team in September, October, going into November, and then they seem to fall apart when it gets colder and the grind of the end of the season. And then going into the playoffs, obviously, you lose playoff games. You have to get over that hump and show that you are a top competitor in this league. And even if they match
Mhm.
up against Kansas City or, any of these other teams, the Browns, I'm not particularly favoring the Dolphins in any of those matchups either. So I think that they have a lot to prove still when it
Mhm.
comes to January football, especially.
Right. Well, just looking back, I think they have to overcome that identity that they've made for themselves, right? They beat up on bad teams and then lose to,
Yeah.
you know, teams that are evenly matched or better, right? They lose big, right?
Hmm.
Just a couple examples like Baltimore, this is week 17 with division on the line. They lose 56-19. We all watched the Bills game, right? Week 18, they lose that one on a kick punt return. And then Kansas City weren't even competitive in the playoffs in the wild card, right? Not even close. But looking back on the teams they did beat, New England 31-17, the Broncos 70-20, the Commanders, the Jets, both huge wins. So yeah, just beating up on bad teams,
Yeah.
and they have to overcome that. They got to learn to, be more physical and show up when, everyone's watching, right?
Yeah, we'll see. And I mean, well, they're going to have some highly paid players on that team to start the season, right? We know
Yes.
Tua is likely going to be taken care of before the season starts. They got Waddle in, Tyreek Hill. There's something going on there, but yeah, they should have no major distractions in terms of that during the season. They've beefed up some of their defensive line to deal with the injuries that they have and carry them throughout, but their defense does concern me. I think that's their biggest
Right.
weakness and unknown really right now. They could score 40 points and lose and it wouldn't surprise me this year,
Yeah.
because that defense still has a lot of question marks that they have to prove that, yes, we've addressed these and this was the right answer
Right.
this time.
Right.
Coaching
Right.
change, all
It's a
that.
good
Yeah, it's
point
tough.
because they've moved on from a lot of defensive players,
Yeah.
kind of the old guard, right? Brandon Jones, safety, has been there a long time. Christian Wilkins, one of the top defensive tackles in the league, moves on. Roquan Davis, Van Ginkel, right? Edge player who's been productive for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And then you draft Chop Robinson. I understand that. You have Jordan Phillips there. And they bring in a lot of people like Poyer, right? Jordan Brooks from Seattle, Kendall Fuller. So it's a totally different team on
Yeah.
defense. So it's like different personalities, not sure about their coordinator, probably the same coordinator. Is it Fangio still?
No, no, he's gone. Yeah. So
He's
they have a
gone.
totally
New
different
coordinator. So it's a
system.
whole
Yeah.
new defense, right?
That's what I was saying. Yeah. It's a new coach, new system. Yeah. They definitely, they might get off to a rocky start with their defense. And again, going into the playoffs, we don't really know what to expect from that defense, but without a doubt, we know that the offense is a strong strength, if you will, like they're one of the top. And then their defense is that question mark weakness looking at the other teams that have gone into the playoffs, even the Jets, the Browns, the teams we just covered, they have really good defenses, and the Bills, right? We have a really good defense. Miami cannot compete defensively with any of those teams at all, even when they're healthy and good. So that is, something that they're hoping their offense can overcome because they are a really good on paper
Mm-hmm.
offense.
So do you think they have they 11-6 last year? Better or worse
Yeah.
than 11 wins?
I'd say worse. I think 10 is where they're at. So not much worse, but they're right there, I haven't gone through the schedule and given them wins and losses yet, so we'll do that closer to when the season starts. But you could tell me they get 9 wins, and I'd still expect them to be the 6 or 7 seed, in the AFC with that record, because the AFC is going to be extremely, extremely competitive. We've talked about the South, we've talked about the North. Those teams are going to beat the crap out of each other. So there is room for teams like the East, and the West is just 3 crap teams and Kansas City. So
Right.
there's so much opportunity there for the AFC East, which is competitive. But yeah, I think Miami could get in with 9 wins even.
Yeah, so you're thinking wild card, gonna have to hit the road.
Certainly, yeah,
Miami.
which is another weakness of theirs. So yeah, we'll see.
All right, let's move on. Let's get into the top competitors in the AFC. I think number 3 here would be the Baltimore Ravens, right? I'm not interested in playing Baltimore.
No.
I think the Bills could beat them. It could go either way. I'd just rather not play them, right?
Why?
There's a lot to like about Baltimore. Well, I mean, they had a great year last year. I feel like they're physical on both sides of the line. Roquan Smith is a problem at linebacker. I know they lost some pieces on defense, but still, it's just they bring in Derrick Henry. Got to worry about that. Now you have Lamar and Derrick Henry. Got to worry about. You also these receivers. Zay Flowers. They're really starting to mature, right? So I just think there's a lot to like with Baltimore. They won a lot of big games last year, games that people didn't think they would win. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So if any of that carries over, I'd just rather not play them. I think they're well coached, extremely competitive. They're in a tough division, so they're going to be, battle hardened, if you will.
Exactly. But that's the problem here. I think that you could make an argument that you could have the Browns and the Bengals over them in their own division, right? And that's if that happens,
kind of taken into account last year a little bit too, right?
Sure,
Baltimore was the best team in the AFC last year, right?
Why though? 3 teams in their division lost their quarterback. I mean, they had nothing. They were totally injury prone. Yes, Baltimore had to take it. Baltimore earned it. Say what you want. They fell on their face in the playoffs, and it was because they weren't very battle tested last year. They won the division because it was handed to them. This coming season, if they make it, they're going to have to be battle tested. Likely, it's not very likely that all 3 teams in their division fall on their face again, right? So I think it's going to be a harder road for Baltimore without a doubt, and they're going to have to prove themselves in their own conference, in their own division, and then get into the playoffs and say, yes, we are a real competition. Now, my thing is Baltimore goes through Lamar Jackson. That team doesn't succeed if he doesn't succeed, period. He runs, he passes, he's an elite level quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But Sean McDermott owns Lamar Jackson. Sean McDermott was the first defensive coach who shut down Lamar Jackson, even though they beat us. That originally it was like a 13-7 game or something,
right.
But that was, back before we were as strong on offense as we are. And now, even again,
played him in a long time.
Baltimore again. Yeah, Sean McDermott has shown he can shut Lamar Jackson down. He knows how to face a quarterback like that. And no matter what weapons are around him, if you can get him flustered and get him off his game, then the rest will just fall alongside him. So yeah, I mean, they're certainly competition. They're certainly good enough to be in the playoffs without a doubt if they play well, but they're going to have to earn it. And right now I would have them as my 3rd behind Cleveland and Cincinnati. I mean, I think Cincinnati wins the division. Cleveland could get the 2nd. Baltimore, they would be competing right there with what I said with Miami for that wild card position, that 6-7 seed at that point. And could Baltimore win the division? Certainly, because it's going to be a game that decides all of that, right? So, but yeah, I think that at least for me, that's where I'm at with that. I think they are a team to be reckoned with. They're not one that I'm like, oh, I don't want the Bills to face this team.
Right.
And we will play them in the regular season. This is one of those seasons where we do play them in the regular season, so we will have an idea of what that matchup looks like and how to prepare for it.
Yeah, they won a lot of big games last year, but again, this is a whole new team, right? They've lost a lot of players, right? A couple notable ones: JD or Clowney, John Simpson, Kevin Zeitler, one of the top guards, right? Patrick Queen, who's been on the linebacker corps for a long time. Rock Ya-Sin, depth at corner. Ronald Darby as well. Tyler Huntley, their backup. If you want to say Odell Beckham, I'm not sure what he did, but J.K. Dobbins now gone, Gus Edwards gone, players they've relied on couldn't
Yeah,
stay
lots of
healthy,
guys.
but yeah, did bring in Derrick Henry, which he's only 30. He's got a
Sure.
lot left.
Yeah, I mean, but he's coming off of injuries, and
But I think it's
certainly,
like, okay, if Lamar's struggling, you can turn to him. And maybe in the past they haven't been able to do that
yeah,
as much,
I
right?
agree. Hmm. Strong running back who you can, toe the rock, right? Just give him the ball 20
Right.
times in a game, and you don't have to do that every game, which is what Henry has done throughout his career. So, I mean, that is at least reassuring from an I'm worried about the injury
Right.
standpoint.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, more to
And
worry
I think,
about.
Mark Andrews still there, coming back healthy.
Oh yeah,
Um,
favorite target of Lamar.
Zay Flowers, obviously, expect him to take another step. So it's just, they're well balanced. They're a lot like the Bills, right? Haven't been able to get over the hump. But again, they were so close last year. Literally, what, a fumble away on the 1 yard line. It seems to be Baltimore's story,
Yeah,
fumbling on the
close.
1 yard line. But yeah, just a team I don't want to play if you're the Bills in
Yeah.
the playoffs. You don't want to go to Baltimore. You know what I mean? Not totally scared of that. I think the Bills could beat them, but
Yeah,
just would
yeah.
rather not.
And again, the good thing is we'll have that preview from the regular season to
Right,
know
right.
where
That'd
this
be fun.
matchup really stands. Yeah, it's
Right,
going to be one of the best games of the year for the Bills. It should be
right.
anyway.
And that's why Baltimore's on this list. It's also why there's 3 AFC North teams, right? That division's tough. I mean, the
Mhm.
Steelers really surprised a lot of people last year, but I didn't have them on the list because they don't match up well with the Bills. They
Yeah.
proved that last year, right? I don't see them being better than they were. All right,
Mm.
number 2 on the list here, counting up to 1, Cincinnati Bengals. You just look, you don't want to play them. You can't beat them. Bills can't do it. As
Yeah,
long as Joe Burrow's healthy, the Bills aren't going to beat them.
that's a tough matchup
And it is what it
for.
is.
Yeah, right. You have to prove you can beat them, right? Like that's the hard part. And even at least we know who the number 1 team is, guys. No secret there, the Chiefs, right? So
Yeah.
at least with the Chiefs, you can say we know we're capable of beating them. We've done it so many freaking times before in the regular season. It just seems like they get the best of us in the postseason. And a lot of that has to do with injuries and situations and everything, but you can't take that away from them. Cincinnati, we haven't been able to prove that yet with Joe Burrow and crew, right? And they are a tough matchup. And just like I said, Sean McDermott owns
Mhm.
Lamar, and I'm not as scared of that. And, even when he has other weapons and things, Joe Burrow finds a way to get it done. And if he's healthy, the weapons they have on offense are undeniable. And this is a tough matchup for the Bills.
Yeah.
Where I
Not a
think
lot
the
of
Bills do have the edge, though, is defense. Now, if the Bills defense is healthy and we can match up well against Joe Burrow, I think our defense is better than Cincinnati's defense. So then it becomes, even if Joe Burrow is playing well, Josh Allen can play better. And again, I think that ball control offense that the Bills are going to have would play key in a game like this because you trust your defense is going to at least stop them once more than they stop us, right? And that's the name of the game there,
Mhm.
especially in the playoffs when these
Right.
are going to be tough
Right,
games.
right. And the last 2 times they have played Cincinnati, the Bills defense has just blown it.
Yeah.
Right? Joe
Yeah.
Burrow, slow, methodical, up and down the field, and it puts pressure on the offense, and the offense has made mistakes, and that's the
Mhm.
game,
Yeah.
right?
New
And
look
it's
defense,
not
though.
just the Bills though. Everyone who plays Cincinnati and Joe Burrow,
Yeah.
including the Chiefs in the playoffs, if you make one mistake, the game's over.
Yeah, these top 2 teams that we're talking about now, Cincinnati and we know to come Kansas City here, that those 2 teams are why the Bills have retooled coming into this season, right? We have tried with, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde and that defense, and, they couldn't get it done. Well, now we've got new names, new faces, new direction, younger, healthier, bring them in bodies. And I think that
New
that
play
is,
caller, right?
yeah, the mentally that approach was so that we beat teams like Cincinnati and Kansas City. We're still capable of beating the others, but now it's how do we get over that hump, quote unquote, with teams like Cincinnati and Kansas City. And that has a lot to do with the defensive approach and the new faces on the defense, right? Having, 2 linebackers who are healthy and at 100%, and then that defensive line, which is retooled and has depth, and then the cornerback in Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas, and we'll see what Elam does. That, you're building on each level, and it's going to look different than it has before against these opponents.
Yep. So we've retooled. Cincinnati's also done slight retooling. I wouldn't say a lot, right? Um, T. Higgins coming back. Zach Moss now, the running back, goes to Cincinnati. Joe Mixon moved on. Trent Brown, right tackle, looks like they've addressed that. Who they lose here? Jonah Williams, kind of a trade there. Mike Gesicki now with the Bengals. Tyler Boyd now out. But they did draft Amarius Mims, one of the top tackles in the draft. Chris Jenkins, defensive lineman, defensive tackle from Michigan, and Jermaine Burton, third round receiver, probably going to play the role of Boyd. So, right, a little bit of retooling, not a lot, right? Again, I think I've said it for every team. As long as Joe Burrow's healthy, they have a shot to win the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, and even when he wasn't, they, I think, that is a team that their offense, again, is built to succeed. Not quite as much as, say, Miami's, but, that they have the weapons. They have the weapons.
One of the more balanced teams in the whole NFL, right? And when you have a balanced team like that, you don't necessarily rely on one person all the time, and that works well.
Yes. And again,
even when Joe Burrow goes down, you can still win some games.
The toughest part for Cincinnati, again, same story as we talked about with Baltimore, their division. There is a real scenario where they're in third place. If Baltimore takes the division and Cleveland's in second place, Cincinnati's in third place in the division. Now you're talking about, are you going to make the playoffs as a 6 or a 7 seed, and who are you competing against? So tough road for anybody in a competitive division like that. But I fully expect, my prediction is that they will be there and have a better chance even than Baltimore.
Yeah, agree. And then they're a team that can knock the Chiefs out of the playoffs too, right? They've proven that.
Absolutely.
So makes it fun. All right. So yeah, everyone agrees Bills can't win that game. All right. So let's move on to the next one. All right. Kansas City Chiefs, number 1, right? Look, it just is what it is. Bills can't beat them in the playoffs. It's going to be a rough ride. Not because, okay, the Bengals, you're going to lose, and you do lose by 10, double digits, right? When you play Kansas City, there's always a freak of nature that happens.
I know, right? It's
so it makes it way worse. So that's why the Bills are in for a rough ride, right?
Heartbreaking. Yeah, you're right.
It's heartbreaking.
Even year after year, again, last year, I think we all know the injuries going into that game, especially on defense, crippled the Bills. One of those players back on half a leg, and we crushed the Chiefs. But they got what's coming to them. They earned it. They beat us with what we had. So there's no way of going back. But this new look Buffalo Bills defense and team, I think, breaks what you said. The Bills are in for a rough ride. We don't know what this new style of defense will look like against a Patrick Mahomes. They've retooled. If anything, they're better on offense, but we'll see with all their question marks and off the field antics that are going on there. It seems like that come with, your third Super Bowl ring comes with
it's been 4 days since the Kansas City Chiefs player has been arrested.
Yeah, right. So they have the best coach in the league. They'll find a way around that kind of stuff, and the best quarterback, obviously. So we fully expect them to be right there in the end. Best case scenario, somebody else knocks them off and we don't have to deal with it. Excellent scenario, we crush them in the playoffs and get over our hump ourselves. But I would if you told me, you can either have it Bills, Kansas City, AFC Championship game, or Kansas City loses in the first round, see ya. I don't care if they lose in the first round. I want to face the teams that are ahead of us. It's not going to hurt my feelings if the Bills don't face Kansas City and beat them in the playoffs. So yeah, let that happen. And, they're vulnerable. They're certainly vulnerable. We know that. We've had them on the ropes multiple times. So it's just a matter of that finishing move. And I really think retooling both the offense and the defense. Again, we've talked about the offensive playmakers, how different they look, how much more dynamic they're going to be, and less predictable, and everybody's going to touch the ball. I just think that's going to match up well against those two teams, Cincinnati and Kansas City. You do that ball control. You trust your defense to do what it can do. They have to live up to it. They have to prove it. And those are the two teams all of Bills Mafia should be the most worried about. But I still think that the way over that hump is through. What gives me hope about getting over that hump is through this new design of the offense and the new young players on defense. And I think that, that is going to ultimately be, you talk about pass rush, for example, right? That is one thing what did we sack Kansas City 0 times last year? And it just seems like, how do you get somebody who's going to be that finisher? Like, we're right there, and nobody can tackle the freaking guy. He's Pat Mahomes. He's going to avoid it, but you got to get to him a couple times at least, fluster him a little. And I do think that this season the Bills are going to put themselves in a position where come playoff time, those guys are going to be ready. Javon Solomon, for example, young guy, he's going to learn it. He's going to be healthy. He's not going to be getting a ton of snaps. He's going to be healthy and ready to go come playoff time. They're going to put him in situations to succeed, right? So
yeah, he'll play 3 snaps.
Yeah, exactly, and maybe get a sack, and maybe get a key sack in a playoff game. That's important.
Well, it's guys like Matt Milano instead of AJ Klein.
Yes,
right.
Oh,
and it's Von Miller being productive. Von Miller, I understand he's an older player, and I'm not expecting him to be Von Miller of old, but like a little bit of production would be nice. And Greg Rousseau, right? The guys you draft high you make an impact in these type of games, and just haven't seen it, right? But that's why you bring back AJ Epinesa. It's why you make Von Miller more of an incentive deal. You know what he's capable of, right? And you're just looking ahead at the Joe Burrows and the Pat Mahomes, and you just hope that Von Miller can figure it out, right? So there's a lot to like there.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, everything's there. The toughest thing is it's a big retool year, and you're gonna have to learn how to be competitive. You got to get to the playoffs first.
Yeah.
And it's a whole new group of guys.
And don't forget, again, Benford didn't play against Kansas City. I mean, again, cornerback, and we were just like, what? Our best cornerback? We've got a troll in the comments saying Bills aren't going to make the playoffs. I'll bet you anything you want on that one. But, and who's going to guard Chase and T. Higgins? Well, our defense is,
Kyrie Elam,
Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, who are both very good, experienced, proven guys now in the NFL. They're good at what they do. Okay,
right.
You're going to give corner. Your Chase is going to get his without a doubt. But
the corner's pretty thin for Buffalo. I think we can admit that. It's pretty thin
depth wise, maybe. But Elam, if he turns into anything, those top 3 as your 1 and 2 and 3, I'm very happy with those 3. And Elam has made plays in the playoffs before. He gives them up, which wouldn't be good. I don't think I want to see him guarding Chase. That wouldn't be. I wouldn't want that one-on-one. He might get 1 interceptions, but he's going to give up 2 touchdowns.
There's really not much we've seen from Kyrie Elam, except for he can catch the ball, right? I think, what did we say last week? He played in 8 games and he has 6 interceptions, something like that.
But he's given up like 80 yards a game or something. It's bad. Yeah.
Right. We don't even know if he can play. So that's a big statement to say I'm comfortable with Kyrie Elam, because we really haven't seen him play.
As the substitute guy, you're talking about the substitute guy. I'm comfortable with him being the substitute guy.
Everyone gets hurt in the NFL, right? And corner's probably going to happen at some point, right?
Yeah.
Is he a liability if you put him in there? Because the 3, you're probably going to play at least a couple games.
Sure.
If it's too much of a liability, I mean, you can't.
In the playoffs, would it be? It'd certainly be
especially
spot
in the playoffs
that I would expect other teams to exploit. If it's not Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, and Elam ends up being one of the guys starting, you better believe there's going to be a ton of balls coming his way. But Sean McDermott's going to know that too, and he's going to put help there for him, safety help, the linebacker help, to make sure that doesn't happen, and they don't just throw the ball his way every time. And even when they do, like you said, he's going to be able to make a play and get an interception in there probably.
Well, if it was that easy, he would have did it already. But instead, he chooses to bench him all year. But whether that's injury,
he was injured.
Not gonna.
We know that now. That's hindsight. I mean, we didn't know that in the moment. We know that now.
Right. My point is, we haven't seen enough of Kyrie Elam to really know.
Certainly, honestly. It's an unknown. But
yeah, back to the Chiefs real quick though. I think they're going to be a very similar team to last year, but just a little better, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by better, and what I mean by all that, is a lot of 3 tight end sets, right? They love that. They've learned that teams aren't ready to be pushed around by 3 big tight ends who can also catch. So they bring in Irv Smith Jr., kind of fits that mold, big guy, definitely a vertical threat at tight end. They bring in Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy, definitely some more options there. But yeah, they re-signed a lot of the same guys: Drew Tranquil, L'Jarius Sneed now, Mike Dana, edge player. So yeah, so there's they really haven't made a lot of changes, right? They moved on from Willie Gay and Mike Edwards, and that's basically it. And Donovan Smith, tackle. So I think it's a lot of what they did last year. Just I think they'll play it better, right? They're going to be better in their execution. Maybe not as many close games. because they did lose, quite a few close games that they should have won last year. But it doesn't matter. Get to the playoffs, they just beat you, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, they're a team. They're without a doubt the team that is at the top of the mountain that everybody has to get over. One thing that I think works in favor of every AFC a person we've talked about, team we've talked about in this show, is that the Kansas City Chiefs are cakewalking to the 1 seed. If they don't get it, it's an embarrassment, right? You got 3 teams in your division who don't care, who aren't going to show up, who are not making the playoffs, who are pathetic, basically. I'll say it straight up, right? The Chargers have a new coach. They don't have wide receivers. They're learning a whole new offense. It's going to take at least a year to adjust. They might win a few games. They might be 8-8, but they're not competing with anybody. The Broncos are an absolute joke. They don't have a quarterback. They're going to have a rookie out there eventually, and the Raiders, we don't know what's going on there either. All those 3 teams are not competitive. So I think that helps the AFC actually, because Kansas City is going to be in that position where we're the 1 seed again. Whereas last year, I think they won the Super Bowl because they had to scrape every game. Every game they had to be ready and they were on their toes. So whoever gets them in that first matchup of the playoffs might be able to topple them over because they're going to catch them off guard and come with their strongest stuff when the Chiefs are sitting pretty thinking we're the best team in the AFC in the NFL. We've already won 2 Super Bowls in a row. We're going to do it again. And then they get punched in the mouth. And whoever that team is, be it the Bills or, whoever else they play, is going to have an opportunity there with that opening. And I think that we'll see that play out going into the playoffs. You're going to hear me bring that up again when everybody on TV and everybody in the world is saying, oh, the Chiefs are the best team in the world and they score this many points and their defense is really good. They're number 1 on offense. They're number 1 on defense. I'm going to shake my head and say, yeah, who cares that we expect that? Look who they're playing. Look who they're beating up on. I'm not impressed. Going into the playoffs, we'll see what happens. And then I'm going to remind you again, come November, December, that the Chiefs are very beatable come playoff time. They will be very beatable, and they're the team to beat. Every team is going to bring their best against them, and they're going to be a little more vulnerable, I think, in this season. So in this postseason coming up. So we'll see. Again, that depends on their health as well. They still have to get it done, barring any major crazy injuries like Pat Mahomes or something. But they fully expect them to be the 1 seed and not even anything less.
Yeah, and I'll say the Broncos and Raiders did beat the Chiefs last season.
Yeah, they were vulnerable.
So it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Oh, they were vulnerable. Not this season.
Again, when they get to the playoffs, nobody's proven they can beat them except for Cincinnati in the last 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, the Bills obviously have shown they can do it, just haven't gotten it done. But any other team, it really hasn't been close. Baltimore, if you want to call that close. San Francisco in the Super Bowl, you can call that close. But they're really good in the playoffs, and that it is what it is. So Are they beatable? I mean, no one's done it except for Cincinnati in the last 4 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So
darkness.
Tough. But they're beatable. I'm telling you. There's always not even just the Bills.
Glad you got hope.
I'm saying the other teams we've talked about today would not surprise me if Kansas City loses their first matchup in the playoffs next year.
Yeah, that's why I like doing the show with you, because you're always positive. You're always very hopeful. And I mean, I'm starting to talk about, okay, remember that championship game where we played Kansas City? What was that, 2020? That might have been the peak. That might have been it.
No.
For us.
Come on now. Even if it's if it's not the Bills, I don't think the Chiefs are gonna, get it. We'll see. I'd love to see, the Cincinnati, we know they can beat them, so that'd be a good matchup. But even if it's the Browns, they could beat them, or Baltimore or something. That's the opening game of the season this year, so it'll be very different look in the playoffs than it is week 1. So, there's lots of scenarios there that I like.
All right, so we'll end the show. Any other competitors in the AFC we missed? Maybe Jacksonville. We're not going to talk about the Chargers. I've done that for 3 years.
Jacksonville is one of those teams they have to prove it's too much. The Texans, right? Everybody's high on the Texans, but
Texans, missed.
They're getting. They're going to go through a rougher ride this year. They came in as the underdogs,
right,
and won a game. Yeah, now they're feeling good about themselves and they've got some weapons there, but
You gotta do it.
Yeah,
Right.
that they still, I don't think, are ready to be in this
Right.
conversation.
I think the thing with the Texans, we have 1 year of a sample size.
Mhm,
CJ
mhm.
Stroud looks really good. Now they should be better with the talent they've added, right? But again, just we've seen them one playoff game with CJ Stroud.
Yeah,
And
and
I think they blew
adversity
out Cleveland, right? I think it was Cleveland.
adversity is
But
the name of the game there, right? Like,
we've seen two playoff games with them.
we don't know what they look like under adversity, right? Again, being the underdog and being the unexpected team, that's one thing. Now you have a lot to prove, and can you prove it even going into the playoffs? They might be able to prove it in the regular season. Maybe they win that division over Jacksonville, and don't count out the other teams, by the way. The Colts look pretty good this year. If Richardson is anything, he can live up to the hype, then that team can compete. It's competitive division overall. But if the Texans get into the playoffs, they're going to have a lot to prove that they belong there again, beating a team like Kansas City, Cincinnati, somebody to put their
Right.
stamp on it and say, yes, we are a real team who deserves to be here.
Yeah, let me look up their record quick. I was gonna say Miami, but Miami really hasn't beat any good team.
Well, they haven't won a playoff game, so they
Right,
really
right. So it's like, do
no.
they even belong
Yeah,
in the conversation at this point?
yeah. Right, you could argue that Texans at least have that over them,
Right.
so
But the Bills have to play Miami twice, and they were this close to losing the division to them last year, so that's why they're on the list.
close, but no
Texans, let's
cigar.
see, yeah, 45-14, the wild card game versus Cleveland.
Yeah, but we
The
know that story.
big
It
win, and then
was fricking
Baltimore
Joe
blew them
Flacco.
out 34-10.
Yeah.
They weren't ready for prime time. Just kind of looking at their record. I mean, they had some big games, right? They beat Cincinnati. That's a big one.
Yeah.
At Cincinnati. I'm not sure when Burrow went down. That was week 10. He might have been down.
Yep. So that was probably after that, but still big win
Yeah.
for them, and
But, then they lose to the Jets 30-6. You know what I mean?
yeah, and even if they win the division, again, they're gonna have to prove it in the playoffs, not just beating a team that doesn't have a quarterback that backed into the playoffs with their defense and, okay, you beat them because you should have at home. Now you're gonna have to play, Cincinnati on the road or in Buffalo or, you gotta beat one of these big teams to be able to say, "We are legitimately in that conversation." Or at least win year after year and look like the Dolphins, right? I think the Dolphins are in that conversation because we know what their offense is capable of, and they've
Mhm.
consistently been in playoff contention. Texans are new to this. They have more to prove.
Right. Well said. All right, we'll sit on that for, let's see, what we got, 180 days till the season. It's
Oh,
going to
no,
be a while.
it can't be that many. I think it's
Not
only
that
like
many?
80
80.
days till the season.
Okay, I'm way
It's
off.
3 months, right? I mean, it's already almost July, right? July, August, September, that's 3 months. That's 90 days, right? So
Yeah, you're
it's
okay, yeah.
close.
Okay, we're closer than we thought. It's still a long time to think about this. So
Yep.
probably opinions change, right? We usually every year before the season we do our
Oh, yeah.
division
We'll update
predictions.
this for sure. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So be
Playoff
sure to be there
teams.
for that. But we'll be here next week, 7:30 Thursday, right here on Built in Buffalo. Thanks for tuning in with us tonight. And if there's any topics you want to talk about, shoot them our way. You can direct message Anthony Romeo New York on Twitter or the hoofpod@gmail.com. Let us know if anything you want to talk about, get involved with. We'll be there.
Yeah. And as always, go Bills. Thanks for kicking it with us.